In recent days, former U.S. President Donald Trump made headlines with a major announcement. Speaking in his usual direct style, Trump revealed that he had given orders to reposition to U.S. nuclear submarines. He said the decision came in response to what he described as highly provocative remarks from a senior Russian official. According to Trump, these words were not just careless comments. They carried a serious risk of triggering unintended consequences in an already tense global environment. The Russian official at the center of this exchange was Dmitry Medvedev, a familiar name in world politics. Medvedev, who served as president of Russia from 2008 to 2012, is now the deputy chairman of Russia's powerful Security Council. In a recent statement, Medvedev made pointed remarks about Russia's nuclear capabilities, including references to long-standing strategic systems designed to retaliate in the event of an attack. Among them, he spoke about the so-called dead hand system, a Cold War era mechanism intended to automatically launch nuclear missiles if Russia's leadership were wiped out in a first strike. Medvedev's words were blunt, even mocking. He dismissed U.S. warnings and portrayed Trump's ultimatums as both unrealistic and dangerous. His tone suggested that Russia would not be intimidated by American deadlines or threats, and that Moscow's nuclear arsenal remained a central pillar of its defense posture. For many observers, these comments crossed a line not because they were unexpected from a Russian hawk like Medvedev, but because they came at a time when the war in Ukraine had already pushed U.S.-Russia relations to one of their lowest points in decades. Trump, never one to let such remarks pass without a response, took to social media to deliver his answer. In his posts, he accused Medvedev of using foolish and inflammatory language and said the United States would take no chances. By repositioning nuclear submarines, he explained, America would ensure that it was ready to act if necessary. For many people, the mention of nuclear submarines immediately brings to mind images of immense, silent vessels patrolling the oceans nearly impossible to detect, and capable of launching devastating missile strikes from beneath the waves. In the U.S. military strategic doctrine, these submarines form one leg of the so-called nuclear triad, alongside land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles and strategic bombers. The idea is that even if an enemy were to destroy U.S. missile silos and air bases in a surprise attack, the submarines would remain hidden and able to retaliate. This makes them one of the most powerful deterrents in the world. Because of their role in deterrence, the exact positions of these submarines are always kept secret. Even their patrol routes are closely guarded information, known only to a handful of top military officials. This is why Trump's public announcement surprised so many. While he did not reveal specific locations, simply acknowledging that subs were being moved is considered unusual. Defense experts quickly weighed in. Some said Trump's move was largely symbolic, a way to send a message to Moscow, without making actual changes to America's nuclear readiness. Others noted that U.S. submarines are already positioned globally to respond to any threat at a moment's notice. So repositioning could simply mean routine adjustments that happen all the time. Still, the public framing of the action was deliberate and the timing was important. The backdrop to this nuclear signaling is the ongoing war in Ukraine. Since Russia's full-scale invasion began in early 2022, the conflict has drawn in not only Ukraine and Russia, but also a web of international actors. The United States has been one of Ukraine's most significant supporters, providing military aid, economic assistance, and diplomatic backing. Over the past several months, the fighting has intensified again, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Ukraine recently endured one of the deadliest airstrikes of the year, which claimed dozens of lives. Inside the United States, the reaction to Trump's statement was mixed. Supporters argued that a show of strength was exactly what was needed to deter Russian aggression. They said that if the U.S. looked weak, Moscow would only become bolder. Critics, however, warned that such public nuclear messaging was dangerous. They argued that it risked turning a war that is currently confined to Ukraine into a broader confrontation between the world's two largest nuclear powers. Some pointed out that nuclear deterrence relies on stability and predictability, and that introducing uncertainty into the equation can lead to miscalculations. The Pentagon itself offered little detail, declining to confirm or deny whether the submarines had actually been moved. Officials stressed that U.S. strategic forces remain ready at all times, regardless of public statements. They also noted that submarine movements are a routine part of maintaining readiness, but are almost never discussed publicly. From Russia's perspective, Trump's announcement was dismissed as political theater. Russian state media portrayed it as an attempt to distract from other issues, suggesting that the U.S. was using nuclear rhetoric to cover up its failures in other areas of foreign policy. At the same time, officials in Moscow warned that any actual movement of nuclear assets closer to Russia would be met with countermeasures. Without specifying what those might be, the European reaction was one of concern. Leaders in countries like Germany and France urged restraint, emphasizing that nuclear weapons should not be part of public political debates. NATO officials reiterated the alliance's defensive posture, but also stressed the need for careful communication to avoid misunderstandings. Behind the scenes, diplomatic channels were reportedly used to ensure that neither side misread the other's intentions. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the message beyond the immediate tensions, this incident also raises broader questions about the role of nuclear weapons in modern geopolitics. For decades, the United States and Russia have maintained vast arsenals, each capable of destroying the other many times over. The theory of mutually assured destruction has, ironically, kept the peace between them. But that peace relies on both sides avoiding moves that could be misinterpreted as preparations for a first strike. Publicly announcing the repositioning of nuclear forces edges closer to that danger zone. For Trump, however, the submarine statement fits into a larger pattern of using bold, tension-grabbing moves to shape the political narrative. Throughout his career, he has often favored direct, dramatic gestures over quiet diplomacy. Whether in trade negotiations, military strategy, or political campaigns, he has shown a preference for making big announcements that put his opponents on the defensive. In this case, the announcement also served to remind both domestic and international audiences that he was willing to take strong action in response to perceived threats. For his supporters, this reinforced the image of a leader who is decisive and unafraid to confront adversaries. For his critics, it was a risky gamble that could have unintended consequences. As of now, the situation remains tense, but stable. There have been no confirmed changes in the actual deployment of U.S. nuclear forces, and no sign that either side is preparing for direct military confrontation. But the war in Ukraine continues, and with it, the possibility that future incidents could again bring nuclear rhetoric into the public spotlight. What this episode makes clear is that in the high-stakes world of international politics, words matter deeply. When those words involve nuclear weapons, they can carry consequences far beyond their immediate audience. In a time when global tensions are already high, the challenge for leaders on all sides is to balance strength with caution, resolve with restraint, and to remember that once certain lines are crossed, there may be no going back. For now, Trump's nuclear submarine announcement will be remembered